Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with us.
Glad to be here.
Today we're looking at the future of cities.
Yeah.
And to do that, we're going to be looking at a conversation between Norman Foster and Paul Goldberger.
Two big names in architecture and urban planning.
Yeah, they did this talk for the Norman Foster Foundation's Future of Cities series,
Hmm?
and it's on YouTube.
Yeah, you could find it there.
And we're going to kind of go through it and pull out some of the key insights about how cities are changing and might change in the future.
Looking forward to it.
So one thing Goldberger said is that the pandemic maybe didn't really change cities so much as it just
Uh-huh.
magnified some things that were already happening.
Right.
Like,
pedestrian-friendly spaces.
yeah, cities were already moving towards, closing streets to cars and having more bike lanes.
Right, and outdoor dining.
Yeah, exactly. And then the pandemic hit and suddenly
Yeah.
everybody wanted to be outside. And so all those things just kind of got...
Got accelerated, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting to think about what will stick around.
I know, right? Like, will this be a lasting change or...
Right, will we go back to...
Will we all just go back to our cars?
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of hope not.
Me too.
So that kind of leads into this whole other discussion about, how cities change.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it all planned out or does it just kind of happen?
Yeah, that tension between planning and spontaneity.
Exactly. And Foster actually asks that question. Can we have spontaneous cities without any planning?
Right.
And it's a good question.
It is.
Like, think about London. It seems all kind of random and jumbled.
Mm-hmm.
But Goldberger points out that even London has a structure to it.
Yeah. It grew out of these villages and their high streets that merged together over time.
Yeah, so there was kind of a plan there, even if it wasn't all.
Right, not this grand master plan, but a kind of organic framework.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Foster brings up this idea of desire lines.
Oh, yeah.
You know, those paths that people wear into the grass?
Yeah, when they cut across a park or
Yeah.
something.
Exactly. He says those are a form of conscious design, even though they're not planned.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's like people are voting with their feet.
They're saying, this is how we want to move through this space.
Exactly. And I think that's where we see that planning and spontaneity aren't really opposites.
Mm-hmm.
They're more like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, they're always interacting and influencing each other.
And it makes me think of Jane Jacobs and her work on organic urbanism.
Oh, yeah, the death and life of great American cities.
Exactly, a classic.
But Goldberger points out something kind of paradoxical about her legacy.
Yeah, he says that a lot of the neighborhoods that Jacobs loved,
Like Greenwich Village.
yeah, they wouldn't exist as they are today without some of the interventions she was against.
Like historic preservation and zoning.
Right. Things that can seem heavy-handed, but actually help to protect the character of those places.
It makes you wonder what she'd think of cities today.
Yeah, would she still be so anti-planning?
Or would she see the value in some level of regulation?
It's a good question. And it leads to this broader point that Goldberger makes about finding a balance.
Between bold planning and community input.
Exactly. And that brings us to another interesting theme from the conversation.
The rise of the private-public realm.
Yeah, more and more of what we think of as public space is actually privately owned and managed.
Like parks and plazas and even whole streets sometimes.
Right. It raises a lot of questions about what it means to be truly public.
Yeah, like on the one hand, these private developers can create really nice spaces.
Yeah, often better than what the city could do on its own.
Right. But then there's the issue of access and equity.
Yeah, who gets to use these spaces and who benefits from them?
It's a tough one.
It is, and it's something that cities are grappling with all over the world.
It sounds like it comes down to finding that sweet spot between private investment and public good.
Exactly.
And making sure that these spaces truly serve the community.
Absolutely. And that everyone has a voice in shaping their city.
Which brings us back to the pandemic and those outdoor dining areas.
Yeah. Some people loved them, some people hated them.
It shows how complex these issues can be.
There are always trade-offs, and what works in one place might not work in another.
Right. And it's all about finding solutions that work for everyone.
And that's where citizen engagement is so important.
Yeah, people need to be involved in shaping the future of their cities.
Absolutely.
Goldberger uses a really interesting example to illustrate the different approaches to urban development.
Yeah.
He talks about the construction of Foster's Beijing airport terminal, which was built incredibly fast.
In just 4 years.
Yeah, thanks to China's centralized planning system.
Right.
And he contrasts that with the much slower process for Heathrow's Terminal 5.
Which took almost 2 decades.
Yeah, bogged down in environmental reviews and public consultations.
It really highlights the different political and cultural contexts.
Yeah, and how those can influence these big projects.
And it raises questions about how to balance speed and efficiency with community input.
It's a constant tension.
It is.
But one that we need to address if we want to create cities that are both functional and livable.
Absolutely. Cities that meet the needs of everyone.
So as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
What role do you want to play in shaping the future of your city?
It's a question worth pondering.
It is, because the future of our cities isn't something that's just happening to us. It's something that we're all creating together.
Every day.
So let's make sure we're creating cities that we can all be proud of.
I agree with that.
All right, so we'll be back soon with part 2 of our deep dive into the future of cities.
Looking forward to it.
So stay tuned. It's kind of like almost a philosophical question, you know?
Man, is.
Like, what makes a space public?
Right. Is it just about ownership or is it about something more?
Exactly. And how do we make sure these spaces are accessible and equitable for everyone?
It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity.
To rethink how we design and manage our cities.
And to make sure that everyone has a chance to enjoy them.
So going back to that idea of balance that Goldberger keeps talking about.
Yeah, between planning and spontaneity.
Right, and between top-down and bottom-up approaches.
He uses this really interesting comparison.
Yeah, at the Beijing airport.
And Heathrow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Foster designed this amazing terminal for the Beijing airport.
Yeah.
And it was built super fast.
Like 4 years.
Which is incredible when you think about these massive infrastructure projects.
Yeah, it's a testament to China's ability to just get things done.
But then you look at Heathrow's Terminal 5.
Which took almost 20 years.
And it was bogged down by all these environmental reviews and public consultation.
And it just goes to show how different systems can lead to very different outcomes.
Yeah, and it raises questions about, how to balance speed and efficiency with community input.
Exactly. Is there a way to streamline those processes without sacrificing public engagement?
It's a tough one.
It is, but it's a conversation that we need to be having.
Yeah, because the way we build our cities has a huge impact on people's lives.
Absolutely, and it shapes the kind of society we want to create.
So as we continue to grapple with these challenges,
Yeah.
it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Every city is unique, and every community has its own needs and priorities.
So it's all about finding what works best in each specific context.
And being willing to adapt and evolve as those contexts change.
Because the only constant in city life is change itself.
That's for sure.
So let's embrace that change and work together to create cities that are truly for everyone.
I like that cities for everyone.
That's the goal, right?
Absolutely.
So we've been talking a lot about the big picture stuff.
Yeah, the systemic challenges.
But what about the everyday things?
Like, how can people actually make a difference in their own cities?
Right. It can feel overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah, like, where do you even start?
But Goldberger and Foster both emphasize that it starts with just paying attention.
To your surroundings.
Yeah, noticing the things that work and the things that don't.
And thinking about how you'd like to see your city improve.
And then getting involved.
Yeah, even small actions can make a difference.
Like supporting a local park initiative.
Or volunteering with your neighborhood association.
Or even just choosing to walk or bike instead of driving.
It all adds up.
It's about being an active citizen.
And taking ownership of your city.
Because the future of our cities depends on all of us.
That's a good note to end on.
Yeah, so we'll leave you with that thought for now.
Okay.
But we'll be back soon with the final part of our deep dive into the future of cities.
Looking forward to it. It's exciting to think about all the possibilities.
I know, right? Like we've been talking about these big global trends, but it all comes down to what's happening in our own backyards.
Yeah, those local decisions that shape the places where we live.
Like what kind of parks do we want?
Right, what kind of transportation systems?
How do we make sure everyone has access to affordable housing?
And how do we create spaces that are both functional and beautiful?
It's about finding that balance.
Exactly, the balance between all those competing needs and priorities.
And it's not always easy.
It's a constant negotiation.
But it's a conversation that we need to be having.
Yeah, and it's a conversation that everyone should be a part of.
Because the future of our cities depends on it.
Absolutely.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah, from the pandemic's impact to the rise of the private-public realm.
And we've talked about the challenges and the opportunities facing cities today.
And the need for balance in all things.
But most importantly, we hope we've inspired you to think differently about your own city.
Yeah, to see it with fresh eyes.
And to get involved in shaping its future.
Because ultimately, the future of our cities is up to us.
It's in our hands.
So let's make it a future that we can all be proud of.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the future of cities.
It's been a pleasure,
And we hope you keep exploring these ideas and having these conversations.
because the future is what we make it.
That's right. And we can't wait to see what you create.